Welcome to the ProCut Rotor Matching System training video on the GYR Validated Brake Service, beginning with an overview of the GYR application. The GYR app has 5 tabs on the right side of the screen: Home, Vehicle, History, Setup, and Cloud. Each of these tabs brings up a different page through which you can perform different functions. The home page is the work center, where the app directs the technician through a brake job. From here, you can scan or select a vehicle. In this case, we're selecting a 2019 Toyota Tacoma with 4-wheel drive. You can also add information on order number, technician name, odometer, and causal code. This information will be included in the finished report that can be printed out. The specifications for the brake system, minimum rotor thickness, and maximum allowable runout are shown here. The captured data as you do the brake job, before and after thickness and runout, will be shown here. The Vehicle tab has a wide range of vehicle-specific data on the brake system, everything from rotor and brake pad specs to caliper bracket and lug nut torque to preferred tire pressure. The History tab gives a summary of cuts on each corner of the bit in this highlighted area, as well as a running number of cuts made by the lathe and the total hours of lathe runtime over its life, or a specified time period, in this highlighted area. Tab 4 is the Setup page, where basic information like the shop name, shop address, and phone number are added once and then stored. A report card can also be printed from this page. Average revenue and expense numbers are added, and the app will calculate profit over any period of time. Cutting head calibration is also handled from this page. Using the included 0.8-inch gauge block, just follow the on-screen instructions to recalibrate the system. Each GYR unit comes with its own dedicated data website, which is automatically accessed from tab 5, the Cloud page. Data is shown by lathe, or if you have multiple GYR tablets or GYR units in a single shop, you can search by computer or account. The results of every brake job are stored here and can be sorted by any of the headings. Using the lathe with GYR. Calibrating the lathe and selecting vehicle. The lathe should be calibrated each time the bits are changed or rotated. This is done by touching the Setup tab, then hitting the Calibrate Lathe option. Find the 0.8-inch measuring block included with the lathe and advance the cutting arms until they just touch each side of the block. Be sure the block is set so the 0.8-inch width is being used. Once the arms are correctly positioned, capture the calibration by touching the screen and confirming. You are now ready to do a brake job. There are 3 ways to select a vehicle. First, you can use the drop-down menus by year, make, and model. Second, you can type in the VIN number. Notice that the VIN will remain red until a recognizable number has been entered. Third, you can use the optional wireless scanner that is sold separately. When selecting a vehicle, notice that some have multiple platforms and you may be asked to select between various option packages. Once the vehicle has been selected, the correct specs for that vehicle's minimum thickness and runout will appear on the screen. Note that the wheels on the vehicle icon are live, and as you select front or rear rotors, the specs will change. If there are drums on the rear axle, as with this 2019 Toyota Tacoma, no data will show. Select the wheel that you're servicing, front or rear, left or right, before beginning. This is important for ensuring that you have the correct targets, since specifications will be different for front or rear rotors. Next steps in the process are always presented in the yellow band. Notice that once a vehicle is selected, the band instructs to attach adapter. Select adapter, mount, and compensate the lathe. The gyr can lead or follow the technician depending on the level of support needed. For gyr to lead, start the process by hitting Begin. The app will show the preferred adapter for the vehicle that was selected. Most vehicles will accept more than one ProCut adapter. You can touch More Info to see the full range of ProCut adapters that will fit the vehicle. Mount the adapter taking note of the proper bolt pattern number that is provided by the GYR app. Use firm hand torque in tightening nuts. Between 25 to 35 foot-pounds is preferred. Once the adapter is mounted, connect the lathe, being sure the cutting head is adjusted to clear the rotor and fit in the wheel well. Center the cutting head so the arms will straddle the rotor, and lock the cutting head positioning knob. Once the lathe is properly mounted to the hub, lock the trolley and turn on the lathe. The compensation process can be initiated from either the keypad on the lathe or the tablet. The screen will show how much runout there is in the lathe while it compensates. Note, the dotted lines on the bar reference the vehicle's spec. The bar will remain red until the lathe is within spec, at which point it will turn green. The lathe will always compensate to less than 1/1000th of an inch, even though many vehicles have a higher spec. The lathe is now ready to make a cut. Capture pre-cut rotor dimensions. The cutting head is effectively a live micrometer. Once the lathe is compensated, crank the cutting head in until the bits are about 1/2 inch from the outside edge of the rotor. Work with the outboard cutting arm first. Advance the arm until the cutting bit just scores the high point of the rotor. Notice that as the arm is advanced, the tablet screen automatically refreshes, asking for 3 touch points to be entered. If you don't want to capture pre-cut geometry, you can continue to the cut process. Otherwise, capture the high point of the outside face of the rotor by pressing the leftmost button, Outboard High Point. Once this is done, slowly advance the outboard arm until the bit just makes a complete scratch around the entire rotor. Capture this by pressing the center button, Outboard Low Point. The difference between your first touch and the second touch is the runout in the rotor. Next, bring the inboard cutting arm in until it just touches the back face of the rotor. Capture this by pressing the rightmost button on the screen. The distance between the 2 cutting bits is captured, which represents the initial thickness of the rotor. If you're not comfortable with any of your captured data points, you can repeat the process. Note that the displayed rotor thickness is always compared to the vehicle's spec. The measuring screen will stay green as long as the measured thickness is over 20/1000ths of an inch above spec, and then go to yellow between 20/1000ths of an inch and the minimum allowable thickness, and then red when below the minimum allowed thickness. Cutting the rotor. Once the rotor specs have been captured, back both the inboard and outboard cutting arms 3 diamonds on the dial off from their final measuring position. This brings the bits away from the rotor face and allows you to crank the cutting head in until the bits have cleared the full inboard swept area of the rotor. Turn each arm back the 3 diamonds that you backed off, and then add another 3 to 10/1000ths of an inch cut depth on each side. Be attentive to the vehicle's minimum specifications and be sure to stay above those specs. Turn off the lathe and lock the cutting arms and install the chip deflector. Then turn the lathe back on and engage the feed clutch. The cutting head will advance and machine the rotor face. The built-in microphone can hear the cutting and will acknowledge the fact with a cut in progress message across the yellow band. If for some reason the cutting action is suspended before the entire rotor has been resurfaced, the yellow band will give an alert of insufficient cut time. Once the lathe completes the cut, the yellow band will confirm this with the message, "Cut completed." The technician is then asked to save the data and is given the chance to confirm that the data being saved is associated with the wheel being serviced and make changes if it's not. Each lathe has its own dedicated website where the data from every job is stored. To reach this website, make sure the tablet is connected to the web and touch the cloud icon on the tablet. Once connected, you can select the lathe option and all jobs done by that lathe will appear in a chronological list. This can be sorted by any of the column headings by simply tapping that heading. Further brake work on other rotors on the same vehicle will be added to the original report until a new vehicle is selected, which will start a fresh report. A report of the brake job can be produced by hitting the print button on the home screen. This concludes the GYR Training video series. If you have further questions about GYR or any ProCut product, please reach out to your local rep or contact ProCut directly by the email or phone number on the screen.